Good morning, everyone. It's Lee Henson, President and Founder of AgileDad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Stand-Up. So without any further ado, let's get started. Today, I wanted to talk to you about a blog post that was just posted here in early April. So this is a very recent blog post, and it was talking about the value behind the Scrum values, the value in the Scrum values, and it was by Gunther, right? So Gunther put this one out there. He's part of Scrum.org. And I thought that this was a really powerful post. It was a great opportunity. And as I read it, it sort of reminded me of my humble beginnings in Scrum. And so I'm going to read part of it to you and we'll comment and chime in and go from there because I think this is a powerful one that I want to review with you. So it starts out somewhere along my journey in Scrum that started in 2003. Coincidentally, mine started in 2003 as well. I started calling myself an independent Scrum caretaker. I like that. I never was crafty enough to call myself that. I didn't exactly know what my title was at the time, but I think caretaker is a great way to put it. On a journey of humanizing the workplace with Scrum. Wow. If you know Agile Dad, one of our big values is on inclusiveness and humanization of work. So this is right up my alley. Because there is more to Scrum than just process, I agree. There's more to Scrum than rules, roles, practices, and techniques. If called a process, which it shouldn't be, it's a framework, then Scrum is definitely a servant process. I agree. The process serves the people employing it. That's the simplest, most eloquent way I've heard it explained. If this is a process, then it is a process where it's meant to serve the people who are doing it. The benefits realized through Scrum largely depend not on the rules, but on the interactions and collaboration of the people who are employing Scrum. Once again, 100% agree. I think you nailed it right on the head. This is why I state that Scrum is actually more about behavior than it is about process. Now, if you know me well enough, you know that I have a psychology background and I talk a lot about behavior and whether it's behavioral driven testing or behavioral driven design or behavior to help drive personas and scenarios so that you can wind up with some really good story mapping or journey mapping. It's true that value drives behavior, right? So when you think about the values that someone has, that's what drives the behavior. And of course, Scrum has 5 values, and I don't have to tell you what those are. All you have to do is remember to use the force. So the 5 values are focus, openness, respect, commitment, and extreme courage. As behavior also expresses values, Scrum is expressed through these values. Makes sense. So if we use those as our barometer, you can often use that as a litmus test as well to see just how well your organization is doing, how they're embracing it. But more importantly, you can measure this on an individual level as well and discuss how you're embracing the Scrum values. Maybe set yourself up with an introspective to review and see where you can improve. Uh, Gunther goes on to say, I don't aspire preaching or even teaching values. I aspire helping people look at the Scrum framework through the lens of the Scrum values, thereby looking beyond the rules, artifacts, or events. Dude, if it wasn't COVID and you were here, I'd give you a hug for that line. It is so true. And he goes on to ask a list of questions to challenge you to think it through. What is it that we commit to do in Scrum? What do we focus on in Scrum? What do we mean with openness and respect in Scrum? What does it mean to show courage in a Scrum environment? This is why I created he created a 3-hour workshop. That's great to guide people in their discovery of the values of Scrum. Uh, you know, I don't know that it requires a 3-hour workshop. I probably dedicate 15 to 20 minutes to this in my class where we go through and talk about this. But more power to him. I think if you can gain, attendance in a 3-hour workshop, that's great. Uh, so he said he ran a couple of pilot sessions, and this is one of the quotes that someone gave. They said, it's a very powerful way, it's very powerful. It is very powerful to be able to talk about Scrum, not just in terms of rules, but in terms of the underlying values. It helps to match the Scrum values with company values to highlight and grow shared beliefs in and beyond the teams. It helps to surface impediments to a more fruitful adoption of Scrum more quickly. Throughout my career as a Scrum Master, Scrum values have been the most powerful tool in my work with people in and beyond the teams. I believe others can go through a similar experience by applying the things that they learn from the Scrum rules. And I couldn't agree more again. The truth is, when you start talking about empirical process, when you start talking about self-organization, when you start talking about the teams being self-reliant and self-guided, uh, you know, it, those are the heartbeat of Scrum, and that's what makes it all work, right? That's the nervous system, if you will. And as the empirical process in Scrum is increasingly replacing the old traditional predictive way of doing things, more and more global Scrum communities are embracing this mentality shift, this culture shift towards leaning into the Scrum values and focusing on what's important, being open and honest in their communications, being respectful about their teams, team members, and to the process, to the rules, by committing to things that they can do and by completing the things they committed to, and by exhibiting extreme courage to stand up for what's right, regardless of whether it's popular or not, right? And I think that, this was a very, very well written, excuse me, well defined, well written, perfect little post. So I love that we finally got back to the basics of focusing on the value and the Scrum values, and an understanding that, hey, these aren't here to put more pressure on you, to apply more rules, but they're here to help guide us and to be a North Star for what we should be doing. And I can say with confidence that organizations that focus more on these Scrum, on the value of these Scrum rules, are going to be the ones that have the most success in applying Scrum framework within their workplace. Well, that'll do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Daily Stand-Up. And as always, we encourage you to tune in to AgileDad.com, where you can learn more about this topic or many others. Do you have something you want us to talk about? If you do, send us an email to learn more at AgileDad.com, or we'd love to hear from you. Until tomorrow, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.